As of right now, several states across the country have started early voting. And as of October 25th, 2022, we are 2 weeks away from the midterms. Now, this should be like any other regular midterm, but now it's turned into a life and death struggle for our country if the Republicans win. Now, paraphrasing directly from one of Keith Olbermann's special comments when he was working with MSNBC, it is as if a group of moderately talented performers has walked onto the stage in a comedy club on improv night. Each hears a shout from the audience consisting of a bizarre but barely plausible fear of or hatred or neurosis or prejudice. And the entertainment of the evening is for each to take their thin, absurd premise and build upon a campaign for governor, congressman, or senator. The problem is, of course, when it turns out that there's no audience shouting out gags, just like a battle of corporations of the United States Chamber of Congress and political insider bloodsuckers like Karl Rove, Dick Armey, and the Chicken Little chorus of Fox News, ONN, and Newsmax, and Breitbart. And their instructions are not to improv a comedy sketch, but to elect a group of unqualified, unstable individuals who will do what they're told in exchange for money, power, and applause, and march this country even backward as they can get, back to the days of Jim Crow, or even pre-Jim Crow when things were 10 times worse, or backward to the Brit lines of the 30s, or backwards to hanging union organizers. The result? The Republican Party, the Trump Republican Party. Vote backwards, vote Trump Republican. And if you're somehow unable to grasp the enormity of the situation, is abuse of democracy to end our democracy. Or, for those who want to be technical, our constitutional republic. To sell out of this country wholesale, to destroy the protections we take care of one another. You think that your freedom and your lives aren't at stake in the next 2 weeks? Now I'm going to give you some people, some Republican candidates up for election or re-election. Just a few of them, not all of them, because I don't have much time in this. But you'll understand what I mean when I talk about these particular people. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who hasn't done a single thing for her district in Georgia, who was kicked off committee assignments because of comments she made about mass shooter victims, not to mention in her racist comments against Jews, who had tried over 45 times since the 2020 election and tried to impeach President Biden because of the Green New Deal, which she in the statement called slavery, and not to mention the fact that he's not Donald Trump, who said that during one of the debates that her soon-to-be ex-husband has evidence that the election was stolen. It just keeps getting worse from there. Congresswoman Lauren Boebert of Colorado, thinking that carrying a gun makes her look attractive, makes her look hot. No, it doesn't, and she isn't. But like Greene, who hasn't done a thing to protect her district, who did anything for her district, screaming that she wants a Christian theocracy in this country that will destroy the First Amendment to freedom of speech, freedom of choice, and freedom of religion. Ted Cruz, senator from Texas, who recently got booed and the middle finger thrown his way during the Houston Astros New York Yankees game with the ACLS, who's done nothing but to help his state whenever it's in danger. That name Ted Cruz came from the fact that he ran to Cancun and tried to throw his own kids under the bus, saying it was all their idea while his state was freezing and people died. Who actually, under his own admission and his own admission, actually pushed the January 6th insurrection, that speech of, we will not go quietly into that good night at a Trump rally. Hey, moving on, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, who started a war first with Disney, then with the LGBTQ, and then with his own state over the Don't Say Gay law that he's trying to push, whose farcical stunt of busing and planing immigrants from Mexico all across the country, costing his state over $12 million, who himself could possibly be under investigation for human trafficking. And he needs to be. Senator Miss Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, who wants a complete and total abortion banned. And regardless of the circumstances, regardless if it was rape or incest, regardless if the mother's life may be in danger, he wants it all banned. Whose prejudice has been shown over and over again towards African Americans, especially the not too recent example of the first African American Supreme Court justice asking what religion she is when there is no religious test that needs to be taken to be a Supreme Court judge, who now has a Supreme Court justice, the acceptable one, Clarence Thomas, blocking him from blocking his testimony to the Georgia voter fraud investigation in which he may be implicated in. Excuse me. And it just keeps getting worse. Herschel Walker, candidate for senator in Georgia, who has absolutely no political experience whatsoever, who has ever since the very beginning of his campaign made a total ass of himself, only because the only reason why he's popular and is probably going to win is because he was endorsed by Donald Trump, who not too recently said that the people, and I quote him, the people of Mexico and China are dressing fentanyl to look like candy. More on that later. Another possibility is that he allegedly paid for an abortion that he's denied to this whole point that his own son, Christian Walker, called him a liar on a loud Twitter post, and pretty much said that when showed the facts and shown the check up to his face, he said, "Yeah, that's my check, but it wasn't about abortion." What was it about? And during the debate with his Democratic rival, Raphael Warnock, pulled out a fake badge saying that he's a police officer when he's not a sheriff's deputy or a police officer. He's an honorary deputy that doesn't have any police powers whatsoever. If that's the case, then you need to make the argument that Dominique Wilkins, former basketball player, has police power as well. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, who acted more like Donald Trump's defense attorney rather than working for his state, who sat by and watched as his state fell thanks to the COVID virus, who's been in office while kids were killed under his watch and has done nothing to stop it, who at a town hall meeting, when a Parkland survivor came to him and asked, "Are you going to stop taking money from the NRA until the situation resolves itself when it comes to mass shootings?" he blew off the question and didn't even bother to try attempting to answer that question. Dr. Mehmet Oz, Senate candidate for Pennsylvania, who's a celebrity doctor, whose only claim to fame is the fact that Oprah Winfrey gave him a show, and who during this campaign made fun of his Democratic rival because he had a stroke. Ted, not that Kennedy, who is a racist in himself, saying that because people like me want accountability for police officers and law enforcement in this country, that we should call a crackhead instead of a police officer. Charming, right? Jim Jordan, who is candidate up for re-election in Congress for the state of Ohio, who's nothing more than a fame whore, showing up almost every week, at least 2 or 3 times a week on Fox News to defend the Republican Party, but mostly to defend Donald Trump, who's done nothing for his district, who is now putting out ads saying that he's going to make the streets safe again, as he gave a damn about our streets, and who is still who's allegedly still under suspect for letting kids being raped at Ohio State University, his wrestling team, while he was there. And there's more to them, but I'm just going to end it here with this person. Governor candidate from the state of Arizona, Kari Lake, who I made a video not too long ago about, an election denier endorsed by Donald Trump, who said she will not accept the election results if she loses and will challenge them, and more on that in a few moments, who said that she is quoting her, we're being poisoned by the cartels and the CTP, the Chinese Communist Party. The communist regime out of China is behind all this, to the point where she will go to war with the NFL if the NFL decides to move the upcoming Super Bowl from Arizona to an alternate place. Again, paraphrasing from Keith Olbermann, you are willing to allow these people to run this country? This is the America you want? These are the kind of cranks, mercenaries, authoritarians, racists, and fascists that you will turn this country over to? If you sit there between now and the next 2 weeks before Election Day, November 8th, 2022, if you just sit there and let this happen, whose fault would that be? Not really theirs. They've been taught from a young age that they're God's chosen just because of their skin color or because of their nationality. They're taught from a young age that freedom is to be seized and rationed. They can sleep at night knowing they did the devil's work instead of the Lord's work, knowing that they elevated themselves and the people that own the corporations that own them, and to hell with everyone else. They see the greatness of America not in possibilities of its people, but in its corporations that can make them rich. They see the success of America not in hard work and pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, but in business swindles to make themselves richer and people like you and I poorer. They see the quality of America not in the quality of building, but making new jobs, pushing us further into the future, but in corporate investing for them to stay where they're at. They see the future of America not in progress to make us a real, true United States of America, but they see it in the creation of a white theocracy where the sin is caged and individuality suppressed, and the religion that they want is the order of the day. They see the future of America not in progress, but in chains for those who don't agree. They don't see America for what it is and what it needs to be to survive. They see delusions, specters, and fantasies. They see an enemy around every corner, regardless if that enemy happens to be a friend, or at the very least, an ally of America, or at the very least, born in America that may have a different skin tone or call God by a different pronunciation. They see tax breaks for the wealthiest of America, and delayed retirement to 70, 80, 90 years old for everyone else in this country. They don't see America for what it should be and what it needs to be to survive. They see America for what they want, when it's just absolute control. But you know better. At least you should know better after the nightmare of the Trump nightmare and the Reagan years and the Nixon years and the Bush years, both Bush years. If you sit there and let this whole thing happen, you've enabled this. It's one thing to be attacked from the outside. It's another thing to be attacked from the inside like we were on September 11th, 2001. But it's the worst thing for us to sit by and let it happen. Not to find the time, the means, and the opportunity as I'm doing with these YouTube videos, as I do on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and yes, to a smaller extent, even Truth Social, as long as they can let me get away with it until my account is actually deleted. Not to find the time, means, and opportunity to at least convince one person at your work, at your school, at your church, on the streets, on the buses, on the planes, and the man sitting in the next car next to you in traffic, to put aside the quote unquote disappointment of the last 2 years and look to the future and vote. Because the disappointment of the last 2 years, as these Republicans keep screaming about, when they give us no solutions for any of the problems that they are screaming at us about, those would be the good old-fashioned days in a Trump Republican ran America. This is the time where the 3-card Monte dealers are trying to take over the government. The candidates who want to make their fantasies of corporate regression, repression, and sovereignty a reality. They're here, and they have energized the proudly uninformed, as Donald Trump put it, the poorly educated, because he loves the poorly educated. And they have they're out there in full force, as Carrie Lake was in my previous video. And if no other factor gets to your heads the importance of voting in Democrat that this year, if there's no other factor that puts you out there and stop being apathetic to it all, you only need to hear the words of Marjorie Taylor Greene and Donald Trump. These two clowns can walk away from the press as much as they want, but they can't walk away from their words. Marjorie Taylor Greene said in a Twitter post, and I quote, "We're going to be leading a revolution in Congress. Joe Biden and his family will be a top target. And we as so will the CDC, the FBI, the DOJ, the DOE, Homeland Security, and many other government agencies that have abused their power." Abuse their power because they're, because they're going off against people that actually tried to destroy this country. Abuse their power because they're going after Donald Trump because he broke the law. And speaking of Trump, oh man, my voice is dry. And speaking of Donald Trump, at a recent Texas rally, Donald Trump called for reporters to be raped in prison. Now, quoting him from this rally, "You take the writer or the publisher of the paper and a certain paper and that and you say, who is the leaker?" Now, he's talking about, of course, the leaks coming from the Supreme Court about their intentions of taking away rights from the LGBTQ and even interracial marriage. And they say, "We're not going to talk to you. That's okay. You're going to jail." And when this person realizes that he's going to be the bride of another prisoner very shortly, but they don't want that. So your idea of trying to get reporters to name their sources is to threaten them with rape? Seriously, Trump? Seriously? Anyway, I want to end this video with a favorite quote of mine from Inherent to Win, and listen very carefully because it applies in this particular situation. "Fanaticism and ignorance is forever busy and needs feeding, and soon, Your Honor, with banners flying and with drums beating, we'll be marching backward to that glorious ages of the 16th century when bigots burned the man who dared to bring intelligence and enlightenment to the human mind." Now, the enraged judge says, I hope counsel does not mean to imply that this court is bigoted." The attorney replies, "Well, Your Honor has the right to hope." The judge replies, "I have the right to do more than that." The attorney replies, "You have the power to do more than that. And you, my brothers and sisters of America, you have the power to do more than that. Between now and in 2 weeks on Election Day, unfortunately, the Republican Party has made these midterms into life and death for this country. But make no mistake about it, we are about protecting the life. They are about distributing death to this country, our constitutions, our freedoms. Make no mistake about that. Fight with our votes. CTP, know the truth. God bless. Peace to the left, justice to the right.